went under the wheels.
Perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Austin.
And in today's episode, we are talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League, the new hit release from HBO Max that I oddly didn't think I was interested in until like 3 days before it was released, and then I became incredibly excited about. What about you guys?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh.
I'm sorry, I'm getting this like work message thread sent to me right now, and I got distracted for a second. So I was not paying attention to what you said.
I'm so used to it, Austin. It's fine. I get it.
God, you sound like my wife.
No wife humor. I wasn't excited about the Snyder cut. I thought it was kind of interesting from a cultural perspective and like a film going forward perspective. But then like I kind of came to terms with how I felt about the movie and what I thought about it, how it was going to go. And then I just became incredibly excited about it. Like unnaturally so, where like when Thursday hit, I was like, man, I just want to watch it now. I want to forget work and just put it on and just sit through all 4 hours and see what, like how different it is. Like how different could it possibly be from the theatrical cut? How much could possibly have changed? And so then like the next 2 days, I was just like, everything I was looking at was in 4:3 aspect ratio and super desaturated. But I'm wondering if you guys felt similar to that or different. It's kind of just like a quick hit.
Yeah, I mean, I followed it for a while, and I mean, I was kind of excited for it. My whole thing was like, okay, well, at the end of the day, like the bones are there, and the bones weren't very good, so like how much better could it be? Right. But then as you like hear interviews, you see trailers, you're like, oh wow, yeah, this actually, and then you see reviews too, when the reviews start coming out, and they're like, oh yeah, it's pretty much a different movie. I definitely got a little more hyped for it, but I mean, I wasn't like giddy to watch it, considering, I mean, at the end of the day, it's more or less the same overall story, just told differently.
So Gabe, how did you feel about it? I don't want to get into what we thought of the actual movie, but the lead up to it.
I mean, I've laughed at it for a while now, and yeah, I think when they announced that it was finally happening and that it was going to be 4 fucking hours, you know, I just sort of, I figured it, okay, the Justice League is terrible. I'm sure that this movie won't be that different, but it'll at least be more coherent, because I know one of my big problems with the theatrical release is that it starts off as like this Zack Snyder shitfest and then turns into an even bigger Joss Whedon shitfest. And if it had just stayed a Zack Snyder shitfest the whole time, it would have been much better.
And I mean, that's definitely what you got.
Well, it's weird because I hadn't been excited about a Zack Snyder film for a while. Like Batman v Superman, when I saw it in theaters, I was like, it's okay. But it was also like 45 minutes of a train wreck in the beginning, and then the second half of it was like decently better, and then, you know, serve Martha, and then it's like, ugh. But for some reason, like leading up to it, and to me, the movie just felt like an entire like ego project. But what? So let's go around the horn, Austin. We'll start with you, since you have already put your review out on the website, underthewheels.com. What do you give Zack Snyder's Justice League?
So, I mean, I think on previous podcasts, it's pretty well established. I'm kind of like the DC apologist for the group. So, yes, there have been some terrible DC movies like Wonder Woman 1984 and Suicide Squad, and I mean, I can't think of the other ones right now, but I'm sure there's a lot of them. As far as Justice League go, even the theatrical cut, I didn't like actively hate it. Yeah, it was a bad movie, but I wasn't ready to start campaigning for the Snyder cut like a lot of people were. Now that I've seen it, I definitely like it a lot more. I'd probably sit Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's just like a solid witness. So, we'll probably go into like improvements over the original one later. There are definitely a lot of issues. I think he could have done what he needed to do in 3 or 3.5 hours, and it's more or less the same movie as the cut that he wanted. If you cut out half of the slow motion or that like 45-minute scene of Barry Allen, there's going to be spoilers in this. That 45-minute scene of Barry Allen saving Iris West, it's like you could have just completely cut that from the movie, and the movie is the same movie. Like, I know you give a little bit more time to the Flash, but I feel like, I mean, I'm sure they had other scenes, or, I mean, they just could have done that scene differently if they needed to have, like, more Flash.
So but overall, it's a solid witness for you?
Yeah.
Gabe?
It's fine. Maybe a high fine. Like, it, despite being 4 hours long, I don't think I was ever super bored with anything, which was pretty good. But, you know, it's Zack Snyder. There's a lot of really stupid stuff. Like, there's a scene of Lois Lane getting coffee in slow motion. And it's just like, why? Why would you do that? What's the point of her getting coffee in fucking slow motion? Or, like, there's so much, like super self-serious, like Leonard Cohen sounding music playing that always describes exactly what's happening in the scene. Like when Aquaman is drinking a bottle of like whiskey in the most ridiculous way possible as he walks down a dock in slow motion, as the waves are crashing on the dock in slow motion. And then there's some, you know, stupid Tom Waits, Leonard Cohen bullshit song going like, there's a king, blah, 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 there's a king, over and over again. And it's like, fuck you. And the whole movie's kind of like that. And then, you know, we'll get into it more, but it's also just, Zack Snyder has kind of a weird visual style to some of his movies where, like, everything he does is color corrected to shit, but in movies like Watchmen or Batman versus Superman, like, it still looks okay, but for some reason in Justice League and in some cases in 300, it has this effect of making real people standing in real places look like CGI. Not to mention all the CGI.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CGI leaves. I will. Steppenwolf looks a lot better. I didn't have any problems with it. Obviously, he looks like a big CGI creature. But pretty much everything else, like, it doesn't look as polished as you think you'd see from like a modern.
Okay,
like,
so I'm gonna go
$300 million blockbuster.
I'm gonna go against the grain, and it was a steaming pile of shit. Actually, just kidding. I fucking loved this movie, so I lose all credibility in life completely. It was a high witness, or even almost a low shiny, but I also had no expectations for it. So maybe that's why. It's gonna stay at a high witness though, because a lot of the issues with the like surrounding moments of the movie, like Flash saving Iris, that it's like it's a cool scene for about 30 seconds and then it goes on for 15 minutes. Or the fact that like Superman is like shouting out his breath across the earth for like a half hour.
Oh yeah, the movie gets off on a really bad note with Superman.
I thought the visual effects were awesome though. I thought they were really good. And again, they have the advantage of 3 years of visual effects technology to simplify a lot of stuff. So again, my initial reaction is like a high witness. I'm probably more in Austin's camp. I can overlook some issues I have, and I like the fact that it feels like epic and that these are like mythical beings who are trying to save the world, even though it's so self-serious and they're like, we're definitely these guys, we're the serious ones. I couldn't stop laughing at it, but I appreciate how earnest it was.
Yeah, I appreciate how unabashedly like Snyder it was. Like, he does not care that like he's almost like a political party. It's like half of the movie going base hates him, half of them, maybe not half, but like a large portion of the movie watching audience despises him, and then a large portion, or at least a decent sized portion, like loves him. And I love how he's just like, I don't care, like they're letting me do whatever I want. I'm gonna have this completely unnecessary Joker scene at the end that is just horribly terrible and would have been bad in a student film. But
I love that
scene.
It's so bad.
It's so I was just laughing the whole time because I'm sorry, I don't remember in the comics the Joker ever making a comment about butt raping Batman and giving him a reach around. And I don't think I needed that. Maybe if it was like a more interesting actor saying that, it would have been like weird and creepy. Like
Jared Leto doing his
Willem,
best Jim Carrey.
if like Willem Dafoe said that, I'd be like, oh my god. Like I would actually be creeped out instead of Jared Leto. I'm like, okay, stop trying so hard to act.
Also, Willem Dafoe's hair in this was just the fucking worst.
Yeah, when I first saw Willem Dafoe, I like almost fell out of my chair. I'm like, he looks like, because we watched Aquaman. We went kind of like on a DC. Me and my wife kind of went on a DC bender, and we rewatched Aquaman. And Willem Dafoe looks stupid in that movie too.
But everything looks stupid in that movie, so it's fine. In this, they're like trying so hard. It's like, look at how awesome Willem Dafoe is with his epic Lord of the Rings hair.
Wait, does
and his
Amber
epic
Heard have a
Lord of the
British
Rings
accent in
armor.
the Aquaman movie?
No,
That's what I thought.
Totally no, we just watched the Aquaman. Her hair is a different color. Her hair is red. It's not orange. And she talks in her normal voice. She doesn't and what's it called? In the movie, she said who was her dad. She mentioned somebody who was her dad, and it wasn't Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah. She said her mother and father died in Justice League, and then it turns out Dolph Lundgren's like alive, chilling. Like,
So they tell, because Aquaman takes place after Justice League. So Amber Heard's like, oh, my parents are dead, and then in Aquaman, it's like Dolph Lundgren, Dolph Lundgren's probably my favorite part of that movie, just because it's fun to see Dolph Lundgren.
I fucking love the Aquaman movie.
I rewatched it, dude. And it's so bad. I don't hate it, but it's so bad. Like, the special effects are terrible, and all the action scenes are so, like, cheesy. And
the villain song, dun dun dun, every time he comes on, so bad.
Well, yeah, and the dialogue is like,
it's my trash. Aquaman's my
the
trash.
dialogue is like crazy bad, but I mean, I don't know. I just think it's hilarious that they completely, like, James Wan saw Justice League or saw the script for Justice League. He's like, okay, so we're not doing any of that.
Wow.
And, I mean,
all of this stuff is really stupid. Can I continue it?
Yeah. Well, we're talking, like, it's interesting how little continuity there is between these DC movies, because, like, Wonder Woman, they're like, oh, you've been in the shadows for, like, since World War II, since Steve Trevor died. And, like, did 1984 not happen? Like, she was on TV talking to the whole world about not having wishes or some stupid crap. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure everybody would remember that. But apparently she's just been hiding in the shadows for all these years. It's so dumb. It's all so stupid.
Maybe Maxwell Lord I mean, I actually appreciate the fact that the DC movies are very fast and loose with continuity, because, like, I think continuity can be kind of a trap where you run into, like, with, you know, Marvel's, like, ardent dedication to continuity between the movies, where, like, you have to watch every single movie if you want to know even a microcosm of what's actually going on. And, like, with DC, it's like, if I never want to watch Man of Steel or Batman v Superman again, I can just pop in Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut, and, like, take, like, a week to watch it and be fine with it 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah. It's like you gotta go one way or the other. It's like you gotta just full on, you don't care, like the X-Men movies. Like, once First Class came out, they just completely stopped caring.
Yeah.
And I think that helped them in the long run, because, like, once they started getting into, like, time travel and all this crazy stuff, you either gotta embrace, like, the ridiculousness and just stop caring about continuity, or you can be like Marvel, and I mean, obviously their formula works for them. So, and yeah. I mean, the continuity formula probably works the best because Marvel's had more sustained success than X-Men or DC. So at the end of the day,
but it's also Disney. They have like the magic formula to make bland, people-pleasing movies.
Yeah, they have the anti-life.
Gabe says with great disdain.
They do. I mean, like, no Marvel movie is ever gonna start on a freeze frame of one of their superheroes getting stabbed through the chest while screaming in slow motion, and having those screams reverberate across the entire planet in CGI.
Or have a character joke about raping one of the main characters and giving him a reach around.
Or fucking one of their heroes just, like, point blank to the camera blowing up someone's face.
That was awesome.
Awesome, dude.
I know this is controversial. I'm totally cool with, like, serial killer Batman.
I'm totally
I kinda
cool with
like it.
Zack Snyder's Batman.
I'm okay
because
with
it's,
serial
so
killer
here's,
Batman. I just don't know, like in that that
I don't like
terrorist
serial
scene.
killer
I don't know how I
Superman.
feel about Wonder Woman like braining a dude, throwing him face first into a concrete wall, and then blood, just CGI blood dripping down from the hole that his head made in the wall that's made of stone. Like,
Okay, I'm cool.
or touching
I'm-
her gauntlets together to destroy half of a building, killing a bunch of people, including that
Right?
terrorist. It's just
Just
like,
to
Including,
kill
Bruce
Bruce Bolton.
Bolton.
All you had to kill was Bruce Bolton. And no, she's gonna blow up half of what is that, like London?
I know.
Like, you are just so
Or like the ending when Superman is like dissecting Steppenwolf alive with his heat vision.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna cut your horns off, you fuck." Like,
hey, it took
Okay,
Zack Snyder
I need to-
3 movies to get a good Superman in there. All
I
right,
need
so
to
I'll
say
take what I
something.
can get.
I need to say something though, because freaking I think Steppenwolf looks like infinitely cooler from Joss Whedon. He looks way too like humanoid in Joss Whedon's version. But I think it's so stupid that his head has that weird shape. It's not just his helmet. Like his helmet falls off and he's got this weird like hammerhead shark head. I'm like, what? What?
Nope, dude, I was all in. The weirder and more like fantasy that Zack Snyder's stuff gets, the more I'm into it.
see,
I will
that's
say-
where I break with you, because I would have rather Steppenwolf just be like a guy with a funky helmet, like he is in the comics. I'm kind of sick of the CGI creature villains at this point. Like, I'd rather have it just be like I'd rather have a dude in gray face paint than CGI Darkseid.
But Whedon's I get what you're saying, but Whedon didn't crack the code on that because
Well, no, Whedon
I don't know.
also had a CGI monstrosity, but it was like a way less
Yeah.
interesting CGI monstrosity.
yeah.
Let's be clear here, like I'm all for bashing, the reshoots that Whedon did, because there's a lot of weird stuff that you'd think like, really they reshot, and just to put this insert shot in to connect the tissue, and like the whole opening of the movie of the theatrical cut of Justice League and all that, like Whedon didn't. He had a lot tighter crunch schedule to get something that was a lot more palatable for the studio heads. Like, I appreciate Zack Snyder's Justice League because you can tell it's fucking Zack Snyder's movie. Like, this
Oh, yeah,
shit
he
would
did say,
never be
yeah.
released in a theater. No one would sit in a theater for 4 hours. No theater would release this for any showing for 4 hours. People, I was both completely engaged and a little bored the entire time throughout, like, maybe, like, the second quarter of the movie. I was kind of, like, dozing in and out while also, like, being completely actively engaged. It was the weirdest sensation. But this would have never been released. And, like, DC looking at this and saying, you got to make this a 2-hour movie, like, no, it would never have happened. There's no way they could have done it and kept it coherent in any way.
Yeah, and I mean, it definitely, like, it's interesting because I'm wondering. Never. I don't think it's appropriate to get into.
Well,
I was going to talk about Ray Fisher and Joss Whedon's dynamic and the fact that, like, Ray Fisher's backstory, or Cyborg's backstory, is almost completely cut out.
Yeah.
Well, I
the
mean,
Whedon
that's
cut.
part of the issue is they have to introduce like 4 new superheroes in one movie, whereas like say Marvel, each one of those got their own movie. So yeah, it's like all the backstories for everyone are absent,
including
from
a
the
hero that's
theatrical
already been
cut.
released. Yeah.
Yeah, they're absent
Because
from
they,
the
like, take
theatrical
time to
cut.
reintroduce Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and then they're put back in for this. So that gives like a lot more context to who these people are and what's going on. I also like that Cyborg is like an emo sad boy for the entire movie this time instead of just the beginning. Because it's like
What's
like
his name?
I just remember watching
Ray
Justice
Fisher is
League
an
and
interesting
his
performer.
and all of his lines are so like angsty teenager. You know, his dad comes in, there's parademons outside. He's like, son, don't go outside. There's monsters out there. And then he's like, there's monsters in here. Like, and he's like that for the whole movie now, and it's great.
Yeah. No,
Come on, you need to use your gifts. I don't have gifts. I'm just cursed with metal.
Is this a gift or is it a curse?
I can give
Oh,
I can
God.
give one waitress in the entire movie $100 million and up in the entire socioeconomic climate, but I'm a monster.
I turned to my wife when that happened. I was like, that is so irresponsible. Imagine like the inflation rates if he kept doing that to people.
Well, I think he just reallocated money from somewhere else. Like, what if he stole
I
money
guess
from
that's
like
okay.
100 other poor people to give her $100,000?
I just think he just like took it out of Bruce Wayne's like bank account, and then he's like, oh shit, well maybe I should repair this flying machine in reparation for taking like the bare minimum amount of money from him.
How much goddamn money does Bruce Wayne have?
How much
Like,
time
he's
does he
building,
have?
Like, I'm like, how is this dude with old Jeremy Irons building like super jets?
I know.
It's like, you don't work. Like, are you getting that much money just from the fact that your name is on a building? What does Wayne Enterprises even do?
It depends on what continuity you're talking about, but what I think the weirder thing is that like Bruce Wayne is obviously so rich that we can't even fathom how rich he is, and spends all that money on building gadgets for him to beat people up, and then Ray Fisher
and cleaning his
like,
windows.
Yeah, and Cyborg, he's like, I'm really powerful now. Okay, time for Marxism. Like, gonna radically redistribute all the wealth. That should be the
No,
sequel.
he's like-
The sequel to Justice League should be Cyborg wants to give all of Bruce's money away to poor people, and Bruce is like, no, I need it to punch people.
Oh no. That totally sounds like some bullcrap Zack Snyder would have. God versus man. Rich versus poor. No, he's an objectivist, so I don't know.
Yeah, because he would say Bruce Wayne
Cyborg would
deserves
be
his
the villain.
money, and the waitress deserves to eat shit and die. I mean, if he is a true objectivist, that's what he believes.
Well, the waitress didn't do anything, but we don't need to get into that.
Well, she didn't, but
Hey man, the
That's
waitress was
objectivism.
working one job and trying to feed her kids, and like, you know, play and a violin played when they showed her, so naturally.
Social commentary.
Again, it's like the movie. I love the movie because like you can watch it in 15-minute spurts and be fine. Because like Zack Snyder, I watched it all the way through. I didn't stop at any time. Well, I did stop in between some of the breaks, but like Zack Snyder's so good at commercial directing that like you can just get the feel for what you're watching based off of like the musical cues, how someone is talking in the scene, and like the visuals. And so it's like, oh, I don't really have to worry about it being like a cohesive flowing thing. I can just watch, you know, like Wonder Woman kick ass, or The Flash get out of his shoes really quickly, or or Batman not show up for a fucking 2 hours.
I will say, I hate that they never show Flash just running fast. Every time he's doing Speed Force stuff, it's slow motion. Like, can we just
With
see
his arms
him?
gangling everywhere.
I know. I'm like, oh my god! If you there's an hour of Flash. There's literally an hour of Flash slow mo in that movie. I want to go through and count how much runtime is just on Flash slow mo. It
Literal
has to at least be
runtime.
30 minutes.
He's moving. Nice. He's moving fast, but in the speed, he's moving in slow motion while he's moving faster than anyone. It's like the most Zack Snyder thing ever.
Yeah, it's like the whole like. I know that Bryan Singer in Days of Future Past kind of like set the template for how we need to shoot like super speed, but I'm already over it. I'm like, okay, we don't need to have like yes, you can have some slow motion. It is visually interesting sometimes, but getting it like every single time he uses his power. And like Flash can do more than just like run. And you do kind of. I did like at the end that we kind of see him like learning the Speed Force, because in some comics like the Flash is more powerful than Superman when he like is at like full power. So I thought it was cool that you kind of see that element of it instead of just a dude that can run fast. But yeah, a little too much slow motion effect. I wish he had more interesting things to do, because yeah, I feel like Ezra Miller's character is just, oh, I'm gonna crack a joke about how I'm like a fish out of water in this scenario, and I'm gonna run fast, and like that's pretty much it.
I mean, I guess I thought they all had like a purpose at least. You know, like it wasn't just like, okay, we have to use our combined abilities to defeat the bad guy. It's like, okay, we have a clear purpose, and we're going to outline in our plan what that purpose is and what we're going to do so that the audience doesn't get lost in what's going on. Yeah.
I did like that because, yeah, in Whedon's version, it's like, oh, they're just getting, like, whooped on, and then Superman comes and just does it.
I mean, I like that too, though.
I did like that, too. I want to get into Superman a little bit, because I have some things I want to talk about with that. But, yeah, I do like that it's a little bit more collaborative. Everybody, like, no character in this version really feels like it's pushed aside, except maybe Batman. I don't feel like he had a lot of.
No, he had
Like-
more to do in this than he did in the final cut, because at least in this movie he was providing perimeter support with guns and like killing parademons. So I like that it wasn't much, but after he initially gets them into the door, then he's just providing perimeter fire, which again, like they show all of the other superheroes doing these like really active moves and stuff. And then it comes to Batman, and he looks like he's like a 50-year-old trying to like go up a mountain, like slowly running and then rolling. And I thought that was funny because like it helped to put the sense of like, oh yeah, Batman is like, without his gadgets, he's like pretty much useless. It's a good thing his gadgets came in handy. So anyway,
Yeah, I'm glad they don't try to make him like more than he is. I like that they do make it clear, like, yeah, Batman's not on the same level as all these guys. Like, the whole idea of Batman fighting Superman is stupid to begin with. Though some Batman versus Superman stuff, like Dark Knight Returns is maybe the best comic ever, and that's got some Batman versus Superman stuff in there. Like, you can make it work, but...
yeah, you can make it work.
Yeah, the stuff in Hush. You could definitely make it work. And then also, there was one I think Grant Morrison wrote. I can't remember.
Oh, fuck Grant Morrison.
what it
He
was
never
called.
wrote anything good. Just stop right there.
That's factually incorrect. Arkham Asylum, All-Star Superman, that's at least two things.
Okay, All-Star Superman I'll give you, but yeah, I'm not a huge Grant Morrison fan either.
Did you not like Arkham Asylum? Like the comic, not the game.
I mean, the game's awesome. I never read the comic. I didn't.
The comic's great. I think, what's his name? I think Alex... No, the
wasn't
artwork's
Alex.
really interesting. No, it
was
wasn't
like
Alex Ross. It's somebody else.
Yeah, it was like Dave McKeon or something, but I feel like
Artwork's
Gabe
cool.
would like the art style. I feel like a lot of the time, though, like Grant Morrison gets paired up and writes something that's like overly written, like way overwritten, and he gets an artist who generally the artistic ability is kind of like under par, and then I'm just like not interested. Because it's just a bunch of word balloons, and I just get disinterested.
I'm not going to say that Grant Morrison is like I'm not going to say he's on the same level as like
Alan Moore.
Well, nobody's on the same
I was
level
going to
as
say,
Alan Moore.
Grant Morrison thinks he is Alan Moore, so don't tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he's written a couple of my favorite comics, so I will give him at least a little bit of credit. But I don't know how Grant Morrison got into this discussion. Oh, we were talking about like Superman versus Batman. So like that all works, but I do like that Batman is a little bit, I don't know. There's so many annoying Batman fans that are like, oh yeah, he took it, like, because there's that Tower of Babel comic. Grant Morrison might. No, I don't want to say that.
Grant Morrison did
somebody
send
wrote-
him back into the past in Final Crisis, which was clearly not the Final Crisis.
Mark Wade wrote Tower of Babel, but there's that Tower of Babel comic, which is actually pretty fun, but it's about how Superman just takes out the Justice League all by himself, and so everybody thinks that Batman. I think I said Superman. Batman takes out the Justice League all by himself. And I think the premise of the comic book is he just does it just to prove that he can do it, because he has like, oh no, sorry. But yeah, everybody thinks like Batman is like the most powerful because of Tower of Babel. It's like, okay, that's one comic. Like, he's Batman. He's just kind of there to be cool. That's why in all of the Batman movies, they never have any other superheroes show up, because that just makes Batman look useless. But I think they handled it the best they could. And I do enjoy Jeremy Irons as Alfred, as like hipster Alfred.
One of the things with DC is that these superheroes aren't supposed to exist alongside each other. Like that's not how it's actually meant to be. 80 years ago, they all had their own comic books, separate universes. Everything was kept separate. And then in the 60s, when Marvel, and they like maybe would do like a team up or something, but
The Super Friends.
yeah, and it was just its own thing. It was separate from everything else. And then when Marvel came along and was like, well, what if all our superheroes just lived in New York City and there was an endless stream of cameos in all our comic books? That became really popular in the 1960s. So then DC was like, well, let's just do the same thing. And now you have Batman and Superman next to each other all the time, even though it's weird as hell.
Hashtag World's Finest.
Yeah. So, it's like this whole concept is already kind of unnatural to begin with, because it's like that you're forcing together heroes who probably shouldn't be together, and then you're constantly inventing dumb new superpowers for them to kind of even the playing field. Like the Flash, for most of his history, was just a dude who could run really fucking fast, and it's a borderline stupid superpower because it's like, oh, that's it. You just run really fast. It's like, yep. But that meant that the writers had to be really clever in order to make his storylines interesting. And then some idiot came up with the whole Speed Force concept, where it's like there's like the Speed Force, the ability to run fast is a finite resource that certain people can tap into, and some guy is killing speedsters so he can get more of the Speed Force for himself, and all this other dumb bullshit. And it's like, why? Like, that's so stupid. Just have the Flash be a guy who runs fast and come up with clever, fun stories around that. But clever and fun are two words that are not in the DC vocabulary and haven't been for a very long time.
I mean, I don't think it's been in the blockbuster movie category for a long time. You're just a hater. I mean, people like the Speed Force stuff. People like the DC what they're doing. Gabe is obviously a hater, and I respect that because I'm a hater
face
too.
That like, oh, we're gonna make super speed a finite resource is a good idea. That's so dumb.
I mean, at least it's something new. It's something like different. I mean, I don't think it's as dumb as an idea as you're making it seem. But
okay, to be clear, like both to agree with Austin and agree with Gabe, a lot of concepts in comic books are stupid, but
yeah,
it's also what makes them fun. Like, I love the idea of the Speed Force. I think we talk about like science fiction and how science fiction is like, you can go so far with like, especially with like the Hideo Kojima stuff, before it's like, oh, this sounds right, and then it sounds ridiculous. That's what comic books are. It's like a less sophisticated, less researched version of Hideo Kojima's science fiction. I mean, and I'm fine with it. I like it. I think when comics get super technical with their science, like, I feel both dumber and smarter. And you know what? I'm fine with that because they're comic books. They're meant to be. They're meant to be fun. I
think we're getting too a little too in the weeds with the comics and not talking about. I want to
Superman.
Yes, I want to talk about Superman. So this might be controversial. I love Man of Steel. But I might, and I think you might agree with me, Matt, that I feel like Whedon might have a better grasp on Superman than Zack Snyder does, because I think I liked Superman better in the original cut of the Justice League than I do in the Snyder cut, because I don't like black suit Superman, and I hate the idea of evil Superman. Like, the whole setting up the sequel for just Injustice, the movie. I hate that. Like, there's so many good, like, DC love, like, they had their whole villains run of comics, like, a few years ago. They love their villains, but no, let's just make Superman the villain. Like, that's so stupid. I hate that. So that's one thing that I would say about Zack Snyder is his interpretation of Superman. I do like Man of Steel a lot. But his interpretation of Batman or Superman in the Justice League and like what he was planning for future movies, I just don't think it's good. You can tell those alternate universe stories. This is the way I look at it. You can tell those alternate like evil Superman universe stories when you actually have a good Superman, like more than one good Superman movie in 40 years. Yeah, like we had Man of Steel, and Man of Steel was critically divisive. A lot of people hate it. I really like it, but like, you don't have like an objectively good Superman movie since the 70s. So,
well, that's
like,
not
why don't
animated.
we try to get that's not animated. So like, why don't we try to get that right before we start making evil Superman? Because like, I think it's lazy, and like, you have Darkseid. Darkseid is the king of the DC villains. Like, he's the Thanos. Like, Thanos was based on Darkseid. Like, he is the big baddie. Why do we need to make Superman evil? Why don't we just focus on Darkseid and his like minions? And you can make it in a way where Darkseid and Superman fight, and Darkseid, like, Superman can't beat Darkseid, and he has to work with the other Justice League members to figure out a way to beat him, which happens in the comics all the time. So I don't know why we need to be like, oh, well, Superman's just going to destroy him. I'm like, why is some dude from Krypton some normal dude from Krypton, if he lived on Krypton, he'd just be a human, essentially. Why is some dude from Krypton who happened to go to Earth more powerful than a god that is taking over galaxies by him, like with him and his army.
Austin, you're
So I
questioning
don't
the
like
decision
that.
making of Zack Snyder and DC Comics. Like, people who have historically never made good choices.
I still think it's worth bringing up though.
I know. It is pretty
because
stupid.
I'm scared. I'm worried, and I know a lot of people want it, and this might be kind of controversial to say. I'm glad that this is the last Zack Snyder DC movie because I don't want. I'm sorry. Seeing Batman Fury Road does sound kind of amazing, especially
Until
since
you
like,
actually
the
start
nightmare
seeing
scene.
more of it.
It sounded amazing until he's walking around with the Joker and Superman is evil and everything just looks CGI stupid.
Yeah. I still love it. So I'm like contradicting myself. I think it is kind of corny, but I still think it's fucking awesome.
I want to hear your opinion on kind of just what I was talking about Superman, because I know you're very opinionated on the Superman stuff also.
Yeah, so I would say that it took Zack Snyder 3 cracks at the whip to try and get even close to having a palatable Superman. I think Whedon has a better idea of Superman because I think, Austin, you're probably with me in that you kind of like a little bit of corn with Superman where he's like, hey, I'm so confident in myself and so secure that I can do anything. And you have like Henry Cavill pulled it off really well in the theatrical cut of Justice League. So it's like, you know that Cavill can do Superman really well, and you know that Cavill can do sort of like this weird, kind of shitty interpretation of Superman from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. And I think there's that moment in the Snyder Cut where he's like, I'm back and it's my second chance. And it's like, okay, I finally felt like in that moment, there was like an almost nice melding of like the cool visual style of Superman from Zack Snyder and a bit more of sort of the good-natured, good Boy Scout version of Superman. Someone asked me, like, why do they always just try and make Superman evil and, like, he's going to take over the world? And I'm like, because they're not good writers. Like, it's like anytime someone takes Superman and they're like, well, I'm going to ask the question everyone asks. He's so powerful. Why doesn't he take over the world? And it's like, well, then you're going to spend an hour and a half trying to think of it and come up with no answers because it's like, it's just a question that isn't particularly well done because it's like his upbringing, you know, there's a bunch of different reasons why his upbringing might have something to do with it or why maybe he's so powerful that he just wants to be good natured, but a lot of people can't foresee that even though he's, you know, a fictional character targeted at children. So all of that stuff aside, I like the nightmare stuff. I think it's kind of cool in a fun fan fiction-y kind of way where it's like, wouldn't it be cool if like Batman is like going out and it's like, and the world's all destroyed, but like done with a budget of like, you know, Lord of the Rings. So it's like this weird, cool, like ultra fleshed out kind of fan fiction idea. And I know that he's a big fan of Injustice. I like it all for sort of like the corny level and like the visual splendor that Zack Snyder does. And I also don't. I liked the idea that like the next Justice League movie would have been Legion of Doom. I think having Darkseid as your main villain makes it feel way too close to Marvel stuff, and you don't want to ape Marvel stuff because they have a limitation. They don't have something like the Legion of Doom that they can go off of and have fun with, but DC does, and it's in the differentiation between the two. Like that's why I think Justice League's Zack Snyder cut works because instead of them being a bunch of superheroes that get around and joke and like fight with each other like that, it's like I said before, it's like bringing together, and Gabe kind of mentioned it, but more in like a negative light, you're bringing together like the most powerful beings on the planet to face the most challenging threats, which I think Grant Morrison, that was his original idea when he launched the Justice League comic in like the late 90s. And it's like, that is a good idea. You can't do it very often because there's only so many existential threats that they can actually compete with and do it interestingly. But that's what makes it great fodder for movies because you only bring them together once every 4 years. They fight this crazy existential threat. They get back to their normal lives. Like, hey, that's cool. That's a cool concept for a series of movies that you can put out that bring a lot of people in. Whereas Marvel's kind of getting lost in like the interconnectivity of like, we need to make sure all of the Avengers connect properly and we're running out of villains here and we need to make sure that this doesn't infringe too much on there. Like if DC had used the Legion of Doom, that would have been more interesting than doing like a copycat of of movie Thanos, which is a copycat of comics Thanos, which is a copycat of Darkseid.
Well, Legion of Doom would be super smart for them to do because, like I said, DC loves to be like, oh, we got the best villains. Like, we got Joker,
Yeah.
we got Lex Luthor, we got Brainiac, we got all the great villains.
They don't have to reinvent the wheel like Marvel does with the villains.
We have 5 movies with Lex Luthor, maybe more. We got 2 movies with General Zod. We've got 12 movies of the Joker. And it's like, why can't we, like, you wasted Doomsday, which is highly irritating.
Although we got the I-beams, Gabe. We got the I-beams.
From Darkseid?
Yeah. I know. I said
Yes.
you said I keep confusing Doomsday and Darkseid. This is the second time because they both begin with D, and
See, that's the problem. Is like Doomsday, like it's not that hard. I feel like they overcomplicate how hard it is to make these damn movies. Like, just take the Death of Superman comic and like make it modern, put in different characters. Because that the Death of Superman has a lot of like Guardian and like Blue Beetle, like a bunch of like C-list Justice League members. Rewrite it to a way where it has Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, blah blah blah, and like they should have saved Doomsday for this. I don't know how they could have done it. But
The whole Superman issue, I think, can be boiled down to 2 things. One, like the real proper Superman, where he's just a goody two shoes nice guy who does the right thing because it's in his nature to do the right thing, doesn't mesh with Zack Snyder's R-rated bitchverse. Secondly, I think, Austin, like, I know you're a huge Superman fan. I think most people who are even mildly interested in comic books don't like Superman, and they don't like him as a hero, so they're kind of more.
I think saying most is. I think that's an.
I think it is. I think a lot of people find Superman boring, so they gravitate towards.
I don't think it's most. I think it's probably a lot of people. I wouldn't say over 50%.
I do think it's most, and here's why. Like, the Injustice storyline, as kind of silly and stupid as it is incredibly popular. And I think part of that is people don't like Superman, so they like seeing him as a bad guy. Their brains can't.
Well, those people are idiots.
They are idiots, but they just don't accept Superman as a hero. They think he's kind of dull that way. So it's like, oh, what if Superman was evil? They're like, okay, now I'm into it. But yeah, if you actually like Superman for what he is as a superhero, you're kind of left on the outside looking in.
Yeah, which is frustrating. And now we're getting a Superman movie from Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I don't see that going back to like the basics of Superman. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer, but I mean, at the end of the day, you're probably right. Like the masses probably want something a little more dark and gritty, but I think they only want that because they think that's what they want. I think if somebody came in and actually made a good, fun suit, like if George Miller was supposed to direct reportedly was supposed to direct a sequel to Man of Steel. I'm sure people would have loved that because it probably would have been amazing.
He's also supposed to direct a Justice League movie back in 2007 or something.
Well, that was like real. That was like in production, and I think Christopher Nolan kind of got in the way of that coming out, which I love Christopher Nolan, but come on, dude.
But yeah, I mean, and Zack Snyder's sensibilities, I think, are endemic of a much larger problem within comics generally, but especially within DC Comics, because I think they leaned a bit harder into this, where like everything has to be dark, gritty, bloody, sexy, and mature all the time. And it's like, no, it doesn't. These are superhero comics. They're for like all ages, man. We don't need... Like, I don't need David Thewlis chopping Darkseid in half in their last alliance of elves and men scene at the beginning.
I love that, too.
I love that scene so much.
I agree with you, Gabe. We don't need that, but fuck it. I loved seeing David Thewlis' giant nose taking it to freaking Darkseid.
I don't want to watch, like, some fun, colorful superhero movie and then have Steppenwolf chopping people in half with his laser axe. Like, I don't need to see that. I don't need Wonder Woman blowing a guy's head off by throwing him face first into a concrete wall. Like, I don't need any of this shit.
Or chopping off Steppenwolf's head.
No, fuck that.
That was fucking awesome.
I
loved all that.
I disagree with you.
I didn't like Days of Futures Past because of how ridiculous and over the top the violence was. Like Iceman getting his head melted off by Sentinels. That was just stupid and gratuitous. And then Zack Snyder takes this to a whole other level, and it's it's one of the reasons I
Yeah.
stopped reading comics 10 or 15 years ago. It's because all they care about is trying to make it as like ridiculously violent as possible. They only care about shock factor, it seems like. Everything's meant to be shocking and make you go, whoa, you know? And they don't care about writing a good story at this point. It's just like, okay, here's 10 more minutes of all your favorite superheroes getting killed in slow motion as part of some like lame dream sequence that Bruce or Cyborg or whoever touches the magic MacGuffin has.
I mean, I'm fine
Martian
with all that
Manhunter.
stuff. Oh yeah, we can talk about that in a little bit. I don't mind all that stuff. I get what you're saying wholeheartedly. And I think it can be done well. I
Yeah,
think it can
I
be done well.
understand.
It just hasn't really been. I think Days of Future Past is amazing, so I disagree on that one. But I think it can be done well. I just think my problem is like you can make a dark, gritty super Batman movie. If you want him to kill people, fine. If you want to have a dark, gritty Joker movie, fine. If you want to have a dark, gritty like Watchmen movie, cool. But I don't feel like I need a dark, gritty Superman. I don't think I need a dark, gritty Wonder Woman. I don't think I need a dark,
that's exactly
gritty
the
Flash.
point. It's like there's certain superheroes where it works, like Batman. You can make a dark, gritty Batman movie, and it'll probably be pretty good. But yeah, like we don't need dark, gritty everyone else too. Like I don't need dark, gritty Flash.
Well, and the problem is like I get like going dark and gritty when you already have like a bunch of movies. So I get why Christopher Nolan took Batman and made it dark and gritty because we had all those like fun, silly Batman movies from the 80s and 90s. So I get why he made it gritty. The problem is like we don't have a Flash movie. Like all we have is that crappy CW show, and I know that I'll probably get hate for saying it's crappy. It's crappy.
Everything on the CW is crappy.
Yeah, I've watched like 2 seasons of The Flash, and I'm not just saying from like watching trailers. I've watched it. It's crappy. And 2 seasons is like 43
But it's
episodes.
all bright and colorful, just like Gabe wanted.
Yeah, well, I mean, not really. They try to make it.
Oh, I'm thinking of Legends of Tomorrow. Like the whole show looks like it's shot on like a shoestring budget, but like they overlight everything, and everyone's like got a bit of a chipper attitude. And I'm like, oh. I don't watch any of the shows. I just see them every now and then. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll watch it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have time for TV.
But yeah, let me finish my point. Like my problem is like, yeah, we don't have like a good Superman movie. Like I said, I like Man of Steel, but it's critically divisive. So like we don't have like an objectively good, fun Superman movie since 1970, maybe when Superman 2 came out in 1970, whatever. We don't have a Flash movie. We don't have like a lot of Wonder Woman movies. We don't have, and I know that Wonder Woman movies aren't like super dark and gritty, especially 1984, which is the worst movie of all time. But yeah, we don't like Suicide Squad. That can be dark and gritty because it's dark and gritty characters. I don't think James Gunn's Suicide Squad will be very dark and gritty, which I'm fine with too. But it's like not every character needs to be Batman. Like, you can have a fun Flash movie where he fights Gorilla Grodd, and it can be, like, a fun time. But if you try to make a dark and gritty Flash movie where he fights Gorilla Grodd, it's gonna be stupid.
Again, yeah.
So I just wish they would, like, before they just go the dark and gritty route, I wish they would, like, at least try out the fun. And it doesn't need to be Marvel. It doesn't need to be, like, there's a generic, just...
Yeah.
comedy fest that's directed by some like TV person. Like you can get I think Andy Muschietti or however you say his last name, who did It in It Chapter 2. I think he's doing the Flash movie. And I'm like, well, that could go one of two ways because the first It movie is kind of fun and funny, and it's like a little adventure film that's enjoyable. It's not really scary. But then It Chapter 2 is just a pile of crap that's like social commentary, like homophobia and small town America, and like
That was in the book.
happening? Like this is so like. Well,
I know what you're talking about, though. Yeah, it could
There's lots of things in the book that shouldn't be in a movie. Though.
him.
We don't need to get. We don't need to get
him doing the.
We don't need to get Gabe
Him
started
doing
on Stephen King.
the Flash movie. It's like, are we gonna get something where it's just like over the top weird horror references the whole time, or is it gonna be fun and charming? And I mean, I'm hoping it's fun and charming.
It could be because I really like Shazam and
David
what's his name?
Sandberg,
David
yeah.
Sandberg was a horror movie director. And why the way the movie looks isn't probably as colorful as I would like. It's got kind of that like Snyder color palette.
Yeah.
It's a really fun, funny, entertaining movie.
Well, that's the thing. It's like you can have like you don't have to have comedy for it to be fun. Like it could you could it could just be a lighthearted adventure that's pretty much played straight.
Yeah.
You don't have to try and
Yeah.
cram it with cringy jokes or anything.
You can just look at the animated series and find your tonal cues from there and go forward that way. Like the animated series hit a perfect sweet spot. They had a really good set of ideas when they're executing the episodes. They fluctuate Superman's power based off of how the episode needs him to be powerful. And it's like, that's fine. You're being fast and loose in the DC universe anyway. You don't need to make him like the most powerful being of all times in his own movie. You can develop it over time. And yeah, just take smart cues, go for a tone that feels relevant. Because like in a movie where he's wearing a symbol that says hope, and the entire movie looks just like completely hopeless with like washed out colors the whole time and like underlit lighting and just nothing but depression. It's like, maybe you're having a tonal problem there, but
he's wearing a symbol that says hope as he sadistically tortures Steppenwolf after beating him up.
I was talking about Man of Steel, but yes, that applies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, and I don't hate it. I don't like actively hate what they're doing. I think they could do it better. And people say when you're like, oh, DC's too dark, and they're like, oh, well, Marvel. I'm like, it isn't necessarily about Marvel because I hate the Marvel. Like, I despise the Marvel movies. I don't watch them anymore because I hate them so much. So it's not like I'm like looking for some like farce of a movie that is just the same thing every time. I like the fact that DC hires real directors. I like that they hired Matt Reeves to do the Batman. I like that they hired Andy Muschietti and David Sandberg to do movies. I like that they hired James Wan to do movies. I like that they hire like real directors. They're not hiring TV show guys or like guys who made like a crappy comedy. Like I think like Peyton Reed, before he started doing Ant-Man, was just doing like crappy Owen Wilson comedies. So you can do like, I like that they're picking real directors. I just wish that they like these directors would pick better visions, I guess. And I think it's hard because I think Shazam was pretty perfect for what it needed.
Right.
I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. I think it was exactly what it needed to be. And I can't say that about a lot of other DC movies. I know James Gunn's Suicide Squad will probably be a ton of fun. And way better than David Ayer's. Oh yeah, David Ayer, another guy who they brought on, who's like a real filmmaker who makes like good movies. And I don't know.
I wouldn't have said David Ayer's a good director.
Thinking they.
So I think the thing with DC is they bring in directors with very clear ideas about what they want to do, and then kind of get in the way of them doing that. Except for Zack Snyder, who they seem to give a lot more freedom to.
I think they got in the way of David Ayer.
I mean, they got in the way of him to an extent, but I don't think it's nearly the extent that they probably got in the way of David Ayer, that they got in the way of
Patty Jenkins at
I'm
the
sure
end of...
James Wan probably wanted to do a little bit more with his movie, but...
I don't think so. I think James Wan had carte blanche on that one.
Stupid enough for the masses.
I think James Wan had carte blanche on that one.
No,
I don't think
David
James
Ayer
Wan would have
example is the
edited
most-
Aquaman like that if he truly had carte blanche. He would not have edited it that way.
It's interesting. The best scene in Aquaman is the trench scene. Like that's the most well done scene, and it's the only like horror-esque scene in the movie. So I'm wondering if he would have had more of a say. He would have focused on the trench and done like a more horror, because that would have been awesome. I mean, I don't think we need a horror Aquaman movie, but I think it'd be kind of awesome if it was directed by
I like
James
the
Wan.
fact that it was like a medieval fantasy movie until it wasn't. When it stopped being a medieval fantasy movie, I was like, but I don't think the tone shifts in Aquaman were handled particularly well. But I enjoyed the fact that he just like looked at it and he's like, I'll just put whatever the fuck I want to put in here. And DC, go ahead and take the scissors to it if you want to. And they were like, no, we just need more reaction shots.
So the problem with DC is that they hire good directors and they go one of two ways. They either don't let them do what they want, or they let them go too far with what they want. And they don't have anybody overseeing it that is like guiding them, I guess, to like a better, because like people want to pretend like a director having final cut automatically means it's going to be a better movie. That's not always the case. In some cases, yeah. Like, I'd rather have Christopher Nolan have final cut than Warner Brothers or something or whatever. But I think in a lot of cases, like, collaboration between a good studio and a director can actually make a better movie. And I think the problem is that DC doesn't have, like, they had, like, I don't know if Jeff Johns is, like, in
I don't
charge
think he
anymore of
is. No, I
DC
don't think he
Entertainment
is.
or
That's
whatever.
why the Snyder Cut got released.
But the problem is they had, they had like a pretty average comic book writer. And I like some of Jeff Johns' stuff, but he's a very like basic kind of, like, he's not coming up with weird ideas. Like, he's a pretty basic comic book writer. And like having him in charge of your movie universe because he wrote 2 episodes of the Flash TV series is dumb.
Well, no, he's in charge of the movie universe because he's DC's golden boy, or he was, at least for a bit.
He was, and then I think he's just kind of a douchebag. Allegedly.
Well, I mean, he is the principal reason I stopped reading comic books altogether, because I was a huge fan of Green Lantern and the Justice League, both of which he wrote, and they got so bad so fast. So I was like, I give up.
I liked his Green Lantern.
I just give up.
I liked his Aquaman run. He had a good Aquaman run. I liked his Aquaman.
Well, as soon with Green Lantern, I think it was pretty good, and then it got to the part where Sinestro created his own like organization of Yellow Lanterns, and then they have a war with the Green Lanterns where everyone dies violently. And I was like, this is kind of stupid. And then at the end of that, they create like a whole rainbow of different lanterns where there's red lanterns and orange lanterns and purple lanterns and all this dumb bullshit. And I'm like, okay, you lost me. I'm done. This is fucking retarded now.
Well, and they had the Darkest Night, I think it was called, and
Blackest Night. Yeah. Oh yeah, the zombie lantern.
It was all like zombie black lanterns, which is a cool idea and concept, but it ran for like way too many issues. I couldn't even finish it. I was like, okay, this is just boring now. I will say I'm bummed that we didn't get. I'm bummed that Green Lantern isn't like a member of the Justice League yet, because I think Green Lantern, like, I mean, I love the early 2000s animated series, so Green Lantern is in the Justice League to me, and he almost always is in like everything. So I'm a little bummed that they would put Cyborg in before Green Lantern. And plus, I think Zack Snyder could have had a lot of fun with, like, the whole idea of a Green Lantern with those kind of effects and everything. Yeah. And I know we kind of got a cameo, but I'm at the point where, like, okay, cameo, like Martian Manhunter, cool. I mean, yeah, that's cool to see Martian Manhunter, but, like, what does it really
It's
mean?
interesting because, in the comics, the Green Lanterns are such an important part of dealing with, like, extraterrestrial threats that, like, alien invasion, you'd think the first person to show up would be a Green Lantern.
Yeah, right? Like, yeah, Steppenwolf and Parademons, like, you'd have a Green Lantern. And, I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that there wouldn't be a Green Lantern, because the mythology of the Green Lantern is that, like, every planet or something, or every galaxy has to have a Green Lantern, like, at all times, and the ring just kind of finds somebody. So it's not like it should have already been, like, established. Like, I don't know. I mean, I saw a report. No, actually, it wasn't a report. Zack Snyder said it himself, that he was considering putting Ryan Reynolds in Justice League. I'm glad he didn't, because I don't think Ryan Reynolds can take anything seriously anymore in terms of, like, a role. I mean, I'm sure he takes his job very seriously, but in terms of a role,
it's hard to find legitimacy with him as
Green
Lantern anymore.
I would have a really hard time seeing him as Green Lantern and not just thinking it was just a joke or a farce. And without him, because, like, he would treat it like a farce, and I just, like, I mean, that's fine if you want to make a comedy Green Lantern movie, but I don't know. I think we'd all be better off if we pretended that Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern.
So I'm going to take the conversation in a bit different direction, and we can circle back if we need to, but I know, Austin, your time is short, and I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about, like, what kind of impact, if any, do you think this has on the greater sort of, like, film culture, public film, stuff like that? Because, like, obviously the easy thing is, like, look at the fans won. They asked for the Snyder Cut, and they got the Snyder Cut. after 3 years, $70 million, and it needing to be released to a streaming service. Like, I was thinking about the movie Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League as a whole, and I was like, this movie is an absolute failure, almost no matter what, unless it's like the best movie ever made. And given the general consensus between us that it's not, I like it a lot more than you guys apparently, but like, I have to think that this is just like a failure, whether it's a failure for Zack Snyder because it's a 4-hour movie that would have never been released in theaters, but is very fun to watch, or a failure for Warner Brothers because it was like there could have been a better product out there, but they never got it. Like, what do you think this says about? I know I'm asking a lot of questions here, so either what do you think this says about the sort of future of movies where fans have the control that they can get things like this released, or they have the perceived control, or where do you grade this as far as success and failure?
I think it's a pretty big success. Like, it's not a good movie by any means, but it's the people who wanted it the most seem to really love it, and I think that's what matters more than anything, especially to the studio. All the talk about it from not from critics but from people is overwhelmingly positive. All the user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are overwhelmingly positive. People really like it, and I think that we've got 2 movies in the last 12 to 18 months that have basically been redone because fans complained loudly enough. You have this and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh yeah.
And both have done seemingly really well because of it. So I think it's just setting a precedent that, if going forward, at least for IP-based movies, fans can bully studios a little bit into getting what they want if the studio goes off the reservation like they did with Justice League or the weird rat-faced Sonic.
Yeah, I think Gabe kind of hit the nail on the head. I don't know if like the cultural impact of Zack Snyder's Justice League is gonna last past like Godzilla versus King Kong coming out next week. I think it will be kind of like out of people's minds, but it does show that like it does show studios that if you listen to fans, they will reward you. So I think that could help in the long run because I mean I watched the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. I didn't particularly like it, but I mean at least he doesn't look.
God, it's
really
at least
stupid.
watchable.
Like he looks like Sonic
to a degree. It's watchable.
Yeah, it's watchable. Which, granted, if it was the other version of Sonic, I might have gotten more enjoyment out of it because I would have just been laughing at how stupid he looked the whole time. But I'm probably in a very small portion of the population that would watch it for that reason. So no, I do think it's an interesting idea that, especially with, I mean, movie theaters are dead. They're just in their final stages right now. They'll always be around, but we're just gonna get to the point probably a decade from now where movie theaters are not like an everyday kind of like cultural thing. And I do think that things going straight to streaming a lot more will give fans more power, I guess, in the way, because if you're just releasing things on streaming, you don't really like. I basically what I'm just trying to say is that I think as we become like, as there are more options, as we have like 5,000 Netflix originals every year and all these HBO Max originals and just a plethora of movies coming out constantly, like you need to figure out how to stand out and actually be good, at least in some way. So I think that gives fans a little bit more power, and studios are seeing that, because I guarantee you if they didn't change Sonic's face and it wasn't a big story, that movie would have tanked hard. The fact that they listened to the fans and it was a big story, it made a bunch of money, it got decent reviews, and I guarantee you if they could go back, they'd do it again. They wouldn't be like, oh man, going through and changing all those special effects for all that money was a huge waste of time. Like, no, this was actually a big success for us, and now we're going to make a sequel. And I mean, I think that's a good thing that like studios are going to be such like less rigid and actually like take into account like, oh, fans have opinions now. They everybody thinks they're a movie reviewer now. So they actually want at least something somewhat good. And it's going to be rare where a movie like Venom makes $900 million, even though it did. Like, the movie-going audiences are still stupid, but they're, like, more engaged. So you got to kind of listen to them.
Well, I think it's more just that you have to scratch whatever their itch is, as opposed to whatever you think it is, or whatever the formula dictates it should be. You know, I would say Marvel is probably the perfect example of something that knows exactly what its fans want and delivers on it every single time. They want the humor, they want the little cameos, they want obscure characters from one thing to pop up in another thing. And they like kind of the lighthearted tone that only really gets like super serious from time to time. DC fans want injustice teases and gore and
Grimdark.
And they also want the characters to have like motivations, and like any psychological depth at all is welcome. So the fact that they added all that in is a plus.
Well, I would even say that fans wanted an epic scale movie for Justice League. I mean, I think part of the reason I like the movie is the fact that it is 4 hours long, and it just feels like this really long, simple plot, but told in a very elaborate way, told in
That's the
almost
thing,
an elegant
is
way
that
to me.
The plot of the movie is bad guys want MacGuffins so they can blow up world with sky laser, which is every
With math. No, they're going to
movies.
blow it up with math.
Same thing. It doesn't matter what the justification is. All that matters is that it looks kind of like a sky laser.
Right, yes.
It could be magic, it could be science, it could be anything. The visual representation is always a sky laser that comes out of the MacGuffin.
Yes.
Which
No,
is,
the
pretty
MacGuffin's
generic.
Vagina.
It's a pretty generic and uninteresting plot, but I feel like the Snyder Cut does so much work to backfill reasoning behind it to make it seem more interesting and thought out than it otherwise would be, because it's like we've seen this story a million times before. There's some very powerful object that's broken into pieces and scattered around someplace, and our heroes have to either collect it before the bad guy does or stop the bad guy from collecting it so that they can't build their world-destroying sky laser. With, I think, a lot, whereas the theatrical cut sort of just accepted the plot as being, well, it's just your basic bad guy wants MacGuffin to destroy the world plot. I kind of appreciate that the Snyder Cut is like, no, it's not just any MacGuffin. There's like 20 minutes worth of expository dialogue that explains why the MacGuffin is actually more interesting than just 3 cubes. As unnecessary as it is, I kind of appreciate that they put this much thought into what the 3 boring cubes are and like how they work and why they're important, and helping to intertwine them with the world of the story and with the characters and things like that. Although I always thought it was weird that like Atlantis and Amazon Island devote so much resources to guarding their magic cubes, and that's never brought up outside of the Justice League movie.
Well, can we also talk about how the Atlanteans and Amazonians, put all that effort into guarding it, and then the humans just bury it in the ground.
And the humans had the best idea
couple
out of all
inches in the
3,
ground.
it turns out.
Yeah, well, that's what I was telling my wife. I was like, actually, if you think about it, like, if they just bury it in some random spot, nobody knows where it is. Like, if you have like all these people guarding it in a big temple, like everybody's gonna know where it is.
But the thing about the humans is they kept moving the mother box. That was the reason why they were able to evade dark after it got activated. It's because they kept moving it. Because if they had buried it, it would have been activated and Steppenwolf would have gotten it in 10 seconds. But they kept moving it, and that was the big thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, not to be like, oh, plot, because one person was like, hey, the black girl who died in the building when it collapsed, when they like destroyed the Amazon building, she's in another scene with Hippolyta later on in the movie when she's firing the arrow. And I was like, I ain't going to defend this movie on plot holes, because this movie has plenty of those. So if that's the case, So be it. But that was the reasoning was like the humans kept moving it because like after it got activated, it was at Star Labs, and then it was at Victor Stone's house, and then Victor Stone buried it on top of his mom, which is weird. And then what's his name took it from the car and brought it into Star Labs, and so I'm gonna go off on another tangent here. Like I already said I like this movie. This would have never been released in theaters. And so one of the reasons I say it's a failure is because the version that we got here is probably even the ultimate cut of the Justice League movie that Zack Snyder would have finished up would not have been this. Like this thing is a completely different beast that he had never planned on making. Because that's why I think
I mean, this movie would not work in a theatrical release context at all.
Yeah, I totally understand why Warner Brothers was like, no, we have to kill this thing or you have to reshoot it. Because if you just look at the way that it works, there's no connective like the plot doesn't even begin. The big sort of like, we need to go and protect the mother boxes. It takes an hour for that to happen. The first hour of the movie is just spinning around, learning people's names, and you don't even know, like, the Flash isn't introduced until the first hour. Cyborg doesn't get his backstory until an hour and a half in. It's like the pacing of what ended up being just Zack Snyder's Justice League kind of works. They should have re-edited it a little bit more to make it a bit tighter, but it flows well enough. But if you're in a theater, it would just be like wasting an hour and a half of your life before the actual movie begins. And you just can't do that.
Yeah, and it's also trying to juggle so many plot threads that like you kind of forget people are in the movie even. Like I remember there's a scene like Lois Lane appears at the beginning and then she just disappears for like an hour and a half and then appears again and like, oh fuck, I forgot she was Lois Lane's in this. Yep. That's right. This is Superman is going to show up at some point.
Yeah, also I'd like to point out, and I don't want to go too much in the weeds for this, the score is
really bad.
Oh, I like the score. Yeah.
Oh,
like
wow.
All of the random wailing and chanting.
I didn't like that. That was the only thing I didn't like. I thought the score actually worked really well, though, aside from that. That was distractingly bad. The rest of it felt emotionally relevant. I like the way that the Man of Steel theme developed because it went from sort of like that bombastic version that's kind of depressing with a boom boom, and then by the end of the movie it's like a lighthearted, like slightly chippier key version of that where it's like, oh, it's a bit more hopeful like Superman should be. And that might have been in Man of Steel, I don't know, but I like the fact that they did that. I hated Wonder Woman's new theme. I agree with you on that. But I thought a lot of the musical cues were relatively good.
It's mainly the Wonder Woman.
Well,
mainly the Wonder Woman was distracting.
Wonder Woman's wailing theme is really bad, but there's also like plenty of chanting and wailing just in the backing track because I guess it sounds
epic.
It sounds epic.
To go along with the slow motion.
Well, it's like when Batman goes to that like little Icelandic fishing village to find Aquaman, and we get brand new footage of a group of women singing for 10 minutes.
Oh my god,
that felt like it was in a completely different movie. I was like, am I watching some like foreign film?
Well, but
right
it's like
now?
that's Snyder in a nutshell. He likes to have this like really solemn choir music to make everything feel like super heavy and impactful.
She's like sniffing
but it becomes kind of silly because it gets overused a lot. Like there's some woman screaming every time Wonder Woman is on screen, and so it loses all impact.
Yeah, it by the end of the movie, because I was watching it because I was like, okay, I know the screaming, everyone hates it, but the beginning of the movie, it's there occasionally, and then the middle of the movie, nothing really happens. But then it's so backloaded with, it's just like every single moment Wonder Woman has her mouth open and then you hear, yeah. It's like, okay, hold on.
Oh my God.
Okay,
so
wait,
bad.
hold on. You guys really should have dialed back. I have some observations on the movie really quickly because I know we have to wrap up. I felt like the 4:3 framing was interesting, but I felt like they didn't frame it very well for most of the movie. To the point, it wasn't very distracting near the end, but I had a problem with the 4:3 framing. Just like we've shot things in 4:3 framing, it's really fun to compose in it, but I don't know if they did it particularly well. That's a Matt thing. That's a nitpicky thing.
I didn't like it.
I didn't.
Especially if epic
I
is
don't
the
like
goal.
4-3. Yeah, we're not watching The Lighthouse. Like, I don't need 4-3
Seven
aspect
Samurai
ratio. I don't like
was
this. I
shot
feel
in
like I've
4:3
seen
aspect ratio, and Seven Samurai is the greatest movie ever made.
Okay,
so.
Okay, well, that was
Right,
like
that's what I
100
mean
years
by.
ago.
I mean,
know
that's
it was
that's what
not.
I mean by like, if you're gonna go 4:3 framing, you need to make sure you know how to do it. Because if you don't know how to do it, then the film, it can become distracting. It wasn't for the second half of the movie for me.
It just,
but
yeah.
it was in the
It's
beginning.
funny. There's one dialogue scene between Bruce Wayne and Diana that I don't know if it just had really weird, unmotivated camera moves or something, but it looked almost like it was shot in widescreen, and then they were doing a pan and scan to get it to fit in a 4:3.
There was a shot in the beginning with where Martha is like getting into the car and she shoves the dog aside, and you can just see the sliver of the dog's nose on the left side of the screen, and it was like, as I was looking at it, I was like, this is super distracting. Why did they crop they didn't crop the image. They shot it in 4:3. Why did they shoot it in 4:3? The dog's nose is fucking distracting. Reframe the shot, please. God damn it. They didn't reframe the shot. So that was...
Yeah, I don't get why it seemed like an unnecessarily like pretentious thing, and that's shooting it in 4:3. I'm not a fan.
I did appreciate it.
There's a reason we stopped.
I
Shooting
appreciated
in 4:3.
that they shot it in 4:3 because this is like the most pretentious superhero movie ever made. And that's probably another reason I liked it, because it actually worked decently well for all of the like title card part 1. You know, like it's a movie set on pretense. So, and also they shot it 4:3 so that if it were shown in IMAX, they wouldn't have to worry about filling up the whole space. That was the other reason they shot it in 4:3. They say.
Yeah. Well, but it's like I keep thinking about how the last like big battle with Steppenwolf and his minions at the nuclear reactor, and it looks so much better in the Snyder cut than it did in the theatrical cut, where
way
everything's all
better.
red for some weird reason.
Way better.
But it's like, even though it looks so much better in this, I kept thinking like it would look even better in widescreen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
it's
a taste thing too, because again, depends on how you frame it. Because Steppenwolf's head rolling into Darkseid, rolling back onto Apocalypse, and then being squashed by Darkseid. I don't care how you frame it; it was still fucking awesome.
Yeah, that was great. I know Gabe probably hates that. But
the freaking Rube Goldberg decapitation machine.
Yes!
that our heroes put together is so just absurd.
See, I know you don't like that, Gabe.
I admire it
but
for its insanity.
I
admire it for its insanity, but that's it.
And don't forget the giant wailing that accompanied it as his head gets lopped off. Again, like Zack Snyder, he's so earnest in it, but also if he can go for it, he's gonna go for what he thinks looks cool. And like, yeah, it can be kind of cringy.
You have to respect
but I
his
appreciate it.
commitment.
Like, I wish there was a bit more emotional relevance to some of it. Go ahead.
The movie in a nutshell is just that scene of Aquaman
Walking in slow motion as the waves crash on top of him.
drinking whiskey with Leonard Cohen or whatever playing as the waves are crashing, all in slow-mo. And it's all just so insane and super on the nose and super pretentious and ridiculous and pointlessly bombastic. And it's like, that's why Zack Snyder's movies I don't think will ever be great, at least to me, but that's why they're always interesting.
So, on that note,
quickly,
I hated that moment where he's walking in slow motion in his whiskey commercial and the waves come and hit him, but then it cuts after the waves hit and he's swimming in the water and the actual score comes on and I'm like, hey, the movie's awesome again. So a very interesting juxtaposition of moments there. Anyway, go ahead, Austin.
That scene was like, Zack Snyder wants to be like a prestige director, and I like Zack Snyder a lot. But he wants to be a prestige director so bad, but his sensibilities are way too schlocky to make that ever happen. So he does have these, like, I think Batman vs. Superman is more pretentious than the Justice League.
Well, someone made an argument that Zack Snyder is he's a camp filmmaker, like Joel Schumacher, but he doesn't realize that he's making camp movies, and I kind of agree with that.
I don't know. His next
Yeah,
movie's called
I mean,
Army
he's
of the
better than
Dead.
Joel
I'm pretty
Schumacher.
excited to see if he embraces, because I guess recently he embraced the whole like ridiculousness about the "Save Martha" thing. So like, every time he comes out with a movie, he usually addresses what critics had about his previous movies, and both like accepts it and tries to incorporate their criticism, but also just gives them a giant middle finger to it. Because, like, you know, they're like, oh, Superman doesn't kill, but he wantonly killed. And they have Batman addressing, like, he killed so many people, I was on the ground level. To which then Batman goes and murders about half a dozen people through the course of the movie. So, like, I got a feeling with that in Justice League as well, where it's like, your movies aren't lighthearted and funny. He's like, all right, I'll put in humor, but I'll also put in some fucked up shit that you guys didn't even think you'd see. And it's like, oh, yeah, Batman's shooting a gun and fucking murdering a bunch of parademons. It's awesome, but it's there.
Is she with you? No, I thought she was with you. So, yeah, his attempts at humor are.
Oh wow, they just left. Wow, that's super rude. So basically, yeah. I mean, I did Ezra Miller annoy you guys, or did you appreciate him? I didn't. I thought it was fine. I think a lot of people kind of could go either way on him. I was wondering what you guys thought.
I thought he was fine. I didn't. I think he's an entertaining performer. I don't think he's.
When he's not strangling
I've
people
seen
on
him in other
camera.
roles where he's actually that too. I think he's still the Flash despite that whole. Even though that is on camera.
Wait, what is this?
Which is interesting. Do you know he like attacked some woman in
Oh my god!
and it's on camera.
What?
And this was only a couple years ago, so it's not that old.
Well, it's,
holy crap!
yeah, it's
I was
crazy because you would think a
completely
guy
unaware
of
that
his
happened.
size wouldn't be able to strangle anyone, but it's true.
I think he's. I thought he was like a pretty big dude, actually.
Is he?
I mean, he
Yeah.
looks small, especially next to like Henry Cavill and Ben.
Well, I think Ben Affleck is exceptionally large. He ate a lot of burgers to prepare for this role.
Hey, look, his arms
That's
are only
like a
so long,
lot.
so he has to make them. He has to make them horizontally bigger because they're so stubby.
Ezra Miller is only 5'11", so he's
Yeah.
like average height.
Average height, I think, is like 5'8", but yeah.
I think average male height is like 5'10". I could be wrong.
I think you have a
We're
warped
all
perception
above
of
the
height,
average height,
Austin, because you're
so.
gigantic.
That is true. Yeah,
I know I could stand there toe
you're
to
like-
toe with Ben Affleck. I mean, he's a lot.
you're like Treebeard. You're just like up in the trees, and it's like that doesn't make much sense, guys. But you're very small. Perhaps it'll work. Sorry.
But as much as I could talk about this all day, we should probably wrap this
I'm
up.
trying to think if I have any other I left my other notebook that I had more points on in the other room, so I don't think I have too much more to say. I would still like. I really.
There's
like,
a lot of Lord of the Rings, like bad Lord of the Rings parody in this.
There is, yeah.
You know, we have like a Gal Gadot gives her whole like last alliance of elves and men speech while a big battle happens.
They really need to.
Cyborg has Frodo's exact vision of the Shire being on fire when he touches the mother boxes.
Oh, we have to do that. I have to talk a little bit about like the really. So I actually thought Chris Terrio's script wasn't that bad. I have to admit, because like it did away with a lot of the like pointless spinning that was in Batman v Superman, the congressional hearing. But like they had this really clumsy like moment where on the tape recorder his father's like, your hands can shape you have humanity, mankind is in your hands to blah blah blah. And then at the end of the movie, of course, he's like, splitting the mother box with his hands, and I was like, oh, really? It's so corny, so bad.
Have you seen Metropolis?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Anytime there's shit like that, I always think of Metropolis, where it's like the mediator between the head and the hands must be
the head and the heart. Yeah. What there was the scene where Flash is running backwards in time, both times I thought was really cool, but specifically the second time where you're seeing everyone's flesh reassemble on top of their bodies, I thought was particularly poignant and fun.
That was neat.
So like there's a lot of stuff like that it's just like or even, I know it's dumb, but like when he taps the sword and it goes back into Wonder Woman's hands, I was like, okay, I like that stuff. I like the last fight because it's clear identity of what's going on and how to proceed. I mean, like, I'm not going to sit here and say like like I'm not going to try and
one-
convince you guys that I like that you guys should like it.
Yeah. My big issue with the slow motion, other than there being too much of it, is that a few too many times you have like like almost freeze frame slow motion of someone whose face is contorted into like they're yelling or something.
Yeah.
And it's slow motion, but the camera's moving around, so it's usually CGI, and it's like CGI screaming faces still don't look good in this day and age. It's why video game characters just kind of, keep a straight face and their mouth opens like an anime character. There's not a whole lot of expressiveness because it doesn't look good.
Yeah, or they just create the character's face to already look like it's screaming, so that when they open their mouth, it just looks natural.
Yeah, but it's like CGI Gal Gadot screaming in a freeze frame, reaching for her sword for like 5 minutes while Barry Allen runs up to get it.
Oh, I didn't think that was
so weird.
I didn't think that was CG. I thought that was just her on a green screen, that they just like rotated her around at like high speed. I could be wrong. I mean, I could be wrong.
There was I'm sure there was some CG involved.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
And it makes it look extra weird. Or like Superman at the beginning, he looks weird. That whole scene just plays out very strangely.
Yeah.
Not a great way to start a movie.
I did not think I was gonna like it because I saw a side by side of the like bank robbery scene, the Snyder cut versus the theatrical release, and like I saw where they took things out, and again, this movie could have been edited down. They didn't need as much like slow walking into the bank and like aims his gun at someone and then slowly walks up the stair. We don't care about the staircase. You could drop the staircase. But it's interesting on a side-by-side comparison to see what elements were lifted out and what were left in, and the elements that were left in, either how much it helps to build the scene or how completely useless it was. And it's surprising how many moments are just completely useless that you could have lifted out. But it did set the tone for the second half of the movie, because by the time you hit the midway point, you're kind of like, I actually, Gabe, you might have had a different evaluation of this because you watched it in multiple sittings, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the kind of pace in the beginning set the pace for the end. So I felt like the movie had a pretty good editing rhythm throughout the movie. But I'm wondering if you had to start and stop it, if the second half felt faster, or if you had to like take time to kind of get back into the pace of it.
Not really. I mean, the whole movie kind of has like a medium pace, I guess, for a kind of a modern movie, and it's pretty consistent throughout. Like it's not too fast. It doesn't like cut frantically from thing to thing the way that
modern movies do, Marvel movies,
Aquaman or Hobbs and Shaw might. But it's also not. It's not like slow, methodical art film pacing either. It's just it keeps a tidy pace. It's always moving along. Even though like certain scenes last a really long time, it's usually like they're cross-cutting between people talking and elaborate CGI visuals explaining whatever they're talking about. So it was paced really well. It was interesting because Joss Whedon's the theatrical cut of Justice League is painful to sit through. Like, I tried to watch it alone and I couldn't because it was so bad. So then I watched it with my brother. So then I at least had someone to talk to about how much I was hating what I was watching.
Right.
But yeah, Zack Snyder's Justice League, as long and bloated as it is never boring. It
surprisingly
always held my interest. Surprisingly, yeah, it always holds your interest and keeps you going through all 4 hours. Like it's nice they have the chapter breaks in there, because otherwise I wouldn't really have a good place to pause it.
Mm-hmm. Also, I think if they didn't have the chapter breaks, it would all kind of meld together. And one other thing you actually brought up that was interesting that I want to say is the scenes that I hated in the theatrical cut, specifically the Amazon chase, the in Atlantis when he captures the mother box, and the tunnel scene. I absolutely hated those scenes in the theatrical cut, and that's why I'm never going back to the theatrical cut. But they were actually incredibly watchable and pretty engaging, even though in the Amazon scene, way too much slow motion of Hippolyta sliding on the floor for no reason. But I was like kind of surprised at how the movie took things that I hated and actually turned them into something that I was like actively engaged in, even though I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, I distinctly remember the Amazon scene being exceptionally bad.
Yeah.
In the theatrical cut. And yeah, it was kind of stupid. There were stupid parts to it this time around, but it was a lot more interesting now. I don't know why. I would probably have to see like a side-by-side comparison, but there's a lot of like, again, gratuitous slow motion. And the reason why the slow motion is an issue is it's because they're not filming something and then just speed ramping it down. They're usually taking a sequence that needs a lot of CGI and slowing it down. And when you're slowing down CGI, that makes all of the fakery of it so much more obvious.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of showing your hand a little bit in a way that you lose the illusion of what you're doing. Because I think, like, when I'm watching a big schlocky superhero movie, and I see Henry Cavill punching a cartoon alien, my brain doesn't register that as being weird. Like, obviously I would prefer if it was a person in
Right.
like maybe a makeup or something, but Superman's punching a cartoon alien, cool. Like, I'm all for it. But when you slow that down to do like really intricate slow motion shots and stuff, then it kind of, at least for me, hits that point where my brain doesn't want to accept it anymore. It's like I could accept it at 24 frames a second at normal speed. Now that it's all slow and stuff, and I don't like it.
That's interesting. I mean, like, I think the suspension of disbelief to me is like, it's a fickle thing. I can understand why it would like why it's such a fine line. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't bother me that much, but I can see why. And again, there's so much of it in the movie, which is the problem, because there's a point where like the entire I was watching it with some people and they turned to me and they're like, there's way too much damn slow motion into this, as it gets into a football game shot in slow motion, and I was like, oh my god, dude. Even the fucking
game
football
shot that for some reason has the Wisconsin Badgers in there.
against Gotham City University. I guess Wisconsin was like, we need more money than NCAA is giving us, so put us in.
I guess.
Also, interestingly, Ben Affleck was an executive producer. I don't know if it was specifically this cut or Justice League in general, but Ben Affleck.
I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised if it was Justice League in general, because I know he's big enough, I think, at this point where he can get executive producer credits on movies. Because I've heard with like a lot of these big blockbusters, obviously the script might have one or two writers, but there's also lots of script doctors going in and adjusting little bits and pieces. And then a lot of the times if a lead actor or multiple lead actors are big enough or expensive enough, they have their own writers who will come in and touch up their parts.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I think doing that will cause them to have an executive producer credit on there.
Interesting. I wonder if that would be, yeah. I mean, Ben Affleck pretty much just makes his own lines up. So he's like, I made up half of what I said. Joss Whedon had nothing touching me on this. So, my last thing is, there was that one dialogue scene where the camera was rotating in a circle at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That was super distracting, and I was like, you guys, you came so far and you did so well, but really, like it was probably the worst cut scene, even though by the end of it, when they were actually getting everyone's dialogue in properly in sync in the circle, and they do the reveal of Superman in it, I was like, oh, it's worth it. I was just like, leading up to that, I was like, this is such an amateur thing. Like, why would Zack Snyder do this? Like, why would he choose to shoot it like this?
I don't know. Well, it's one of those things where it's like Snyder shot, 8 hours of footage and had to cut it down to a 2-hour movie. I think a lot of the time, I think a lot of movies are kind of like that, where they have, the initial cut of it's going to be 4 hours and you got to cut it down to 2 hours. And there's a lot of, a lot of the shots that get left on the cutting room floor are not the director's best work. But if you're trying to make a movie like this, where it's all inclusive of everything the director wanted to have in there, some shots where they tried something and it didn't work are gonna find their way in. And it's like, visually, Zack Snyder knows what he's doing. He makes good visual decisions that communicate exactly what he's trying to communicate. I sometimes disagree with the content of what he's trying to say. Like I don't know why you're having Aquaman drink liquor on a dock for 5 minutes in slow motion, but
and not even.
I know
finish
what
the
you're
bottle.
trying to say. I know exactly what you're trying to say by showing me this. Right?
Yeah.
It's not super subtle, but it works and it's very clear and effective. That said, it's a 4-hour movie, so some of his shots where maybe he just had a bad day or something, it's not his best work, will be in the movie. Like the kind of pan and scanny conversation between Bruce and Diana that I was like, why is the camera moving like this? I think it was just, it was a situation where it's like that was the best cut of that scene that they had, and they just had to roll with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, typically Zack Snyder is very good at not making mistakes like that.
I know, that's strange. Well, I would say that, but the scene between Clark Kent and Ben Affleck and Bruce Wayne and Superman versus Batman: Dawn of Justice, when they're just like talking to each other back and forth, and Jesse Eisenberg Luthor comes over. That was also one of those shots where I'm like, really? You went with such a pedestrian standard like composition for this? But
yeah. Also, I just want to say that speaking of Ben Affleck and all of the things he's been through in his personal life, that last scene where the Martian Manhunter says, "Hi, I'm the Martian Manhunter. Nice to meet you, Batman."
yeah.
Is it just me, or did that look like post-rehab Ben Affleck?
He looked skinny.
Like he looks thinner. He looks healthier.
Yeah.
He's not all like, he doesn't have like, he doesn't look like an alcoholic who eats fast food all the time.
His whole face doesn't look like the Michelin Man.
Yeah, like he's thinner and he looks like he's sober. And it's like, that's interesting. It's weird that they have like, it's weird that there's that visual inconsistency. And then I think in the post-apocalyptic vision at the very end as well, it almost looks like the Batman mask is too big for him.
Yeah, because you could see
his
his
face looks too
nose.
thin.
You could see the bottom of his nose shutting it. So I think what it is Ana de Armas is basically sexing Ben Affleck back into health. And then, no, I think you're right. I didn't realize that, because, he was so thin. I thought it was shot earlier on. But I know that they brought Ben Affleck in for like 2 days of shoots. And they brought Jared Leto in for 1 day. So it's possible that the whole nightmare sequence at the very end was reshoots, which means like they brought Amber Heard back for a day, which seems weird, and they got Joe Manganiello to like shave his head. So I don't know. I think it might be a combination of like there was part of that footage is already there, and then the ending scene with Martian Manhunter was one of those things that was reshot. I don't know. That's a good. Oh man. Because I thought he would look worse now. I thought he'd look even more swollen, but he's looking healthy now.
He's looking healthy. It's good. I'm happy for him.
I am too.
Because the whole like Ben Affleck's Batman has been this weird saga of like he was making this right around a time that he started drinking way too much and putting on all this weight. So then, you've got like big bulky Batman, and it's weird watching Batman run around and fight parademons because he looks so huge and slow.
Yeah,
and when he does a dive roll, it's like at half speed.
Yeah, I know.
It's like he should have just gotten a stuntman to do that.
It looks so funny. I was
and then like
laughing,
so it's like you got Ben Fatfleck as Fat Man, and then he's got the Fat Bat logo, and the Fat Bat logo is the bat signal, so now it's the fat signal. And it's just like everything is so big and bulky to the point where it's like smushing out all detail or like fine lines. And then at the end it's like, oh, Ben cleaned himself up. He's looking good.
He almost looks like he did when he when he shot Argo before like the miserableness of Batman v Superman just made him sad. Affleck. Maybe his rekindled friendship with Kevin Smith is like turned his life around, so his face isn't so swollen all the time.
Oh, maybe he's on one of Kevin Smith's like crazy yo-yo diets.
He's become a vegan. Man, I don't know. I
don't know why Kevin Smith is such a huge fan of like losing 100 pounds in 3 months and then gaining it all back and then rinse and repeat.
No, he's put it off for the most part because he had to go full vegan because he had a heart attack. I knew.
Oh, that's right.
I knew a lot about
this time. Is the final. It's the final confrontation. He's finally just committing to eating healthy so he doesn't die.
Ben Affleck saw Kevin Smith and he's like, "There's no way There's no way Kevin Smith's gonna be thinner than me." That's the motivation. That's really mean. Kevin Smith has a huge fan base that they could use to like completely destroy our lives, because I know that I've definitely said a couple of things on Twitter that can get me canceled, #canceled and fired forever.
I was gonna say, I like the thing with Kevin Smith is I love Clerks, and that's kind of it.
I feel like that's the way it is for a lot of people.
Well, I think that it's like that for most people, and I've heard good things about Chasing Amy, but yeah, I mean Kevin Smith seems like a really cool dude, but not a fan of a lot of his movies.
I think like Kevin Smith now, he's not so much a filmmaker as he is a television director for WB stuff, and and he just uses his own stature as like a pop culture icon to sell movies, because he did that thing here where he was like, "Hey, it's the launch of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm here to talk about it with you guys. I'm so excited because I love Zack Snyder. I love Ben Affleck." And he's such a good, like, I don't want to say like hype man, but that's what it seems like he is.
Yeah. Also, Kevin Smith, speaking of, it all comes full circle because Kevin Smith has written comics for DC.
Yes, he has.
And he wrote, I think his most famous one is he wrote an infamous Batman comic where Batman pisses himself.
Yes, he's recounting how on his first night of cracking people's skulls, he may have peed a little, and people took offense to that. How dare Bruce Wayne, when interacting with lowlifes for the first time, may have soiled his jeans. Hey guys, I'm going to break it to you this way. Bruce Wayne probably soils himself all the time because he's running around fighting bad guys in the middle of the night in a suit that he probably can't take off to take a shit. So
yep, it's just full of shit and piss all the time.
It's like, why did Wayne Corp buy Depends?
Unless his diet is like 100% fiber.
Oh god.
So he's only moving it like in the morning, and then it's all bound up for the rest of the time.
There's that throwaway line where it's like Alfred in Batman Forever, where Alfred's like, "Shall I make you leftovers, sir?" And he's like, it's Val Kilmer's like, "I'll get takeout." And it's like, you never think about it, but man, like, can you imagine Batman like going to a fine dining restaurant and just being like, "Yeah, I'll take steak tartare and like a glass of water." It's just like, what the fuck? Like, or like ordering from the
I got Taco Bell before a night of crime fighting. Worst mistake I've ever made.
Like the Uber Eats guy comes to or Batman does that in his spare time. He's just like an Uber Eats driver as he's knocking in Joker's face. It's like, "I gotta go to the Joker and see if I can pick anyone up so I can get a free tip." It's fucking driving.
Well, I was gonna say, like, Batman pissing himself is definitely not the weirdest thing that DC has done with that character. Because remember when DC launched their like adults only superhero comics? It was called like DC Black Label or something.
We're talking about a couple of years ago, right?
This is a few years ago.
Yeah,
like
yeah. And they showed Bat.
And then we had the Bat Dick. Like,
yeah, I remember.
For no reason. It's like, here's Batman's junk.
It's what you've always wanted to see.
Book.
Bruce Wayne's penis. Like, no one wanted to see it. And why is it so small?
I've made this point many, many times, and fortunately Austin's not here to rebut me. But like that my big problem with comic books in general, but DC especially, is like their idea of dark and mature is a child's idea of dark and mature. They're like what if we told, it's like they're basically telling the same kind of silly but should be fun comic book stories that they've always been telling. The only difference now is that they're not fun because everyone's depressed and alcoholic, and you see their dicks everywhere, and there's all this violent murder all the time, and it's like I kind of want light-hearted superhero stories. I don't want DC Black Label or whatever it was.
I'm just imagining like Superman.
I don't need a cartoon sex scene between Batman and Batgirl in an adaptation of fucking
There it
The Killing
is!
Joke.
There it
I
is!
don't need it. I don't need it. I don't want it. The world doesn't need that, DC. They don't need any of that.
So a couple of notes. One, as you were saying that depressed, like alcoholic version of all these superheroes, all I thought was Superman trying to drink a bottle of alcohol and then being sad because he can't get drunk. And then the other thing I was thinking of was one of the things that has been in the news cycle is how Patty Jenkins purposefully took out the whole idea that like Zeus came down and raped Diana's mother, and that's how Wonder Woman came to be. And she was like, there's just no place for that here. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck yeah.
Yeah,
I'm down
agree.
with that. Like, I'm glad they simplified it. They made it,
for it.
like, I'm glad that they didn't have the sort of like grim 80s George Perez being like, I'm a feminist creator, but also Zeus rapes people, which he does.
Yeah.
He does. It's uncomfortable, but yeah, I appreciate that they took liberties with that to make it more, especially like the Wonder Woman movies. Like, yeah, we can make fun of it. Wonder Woman 1984 didn't turn out perfect, but at least they are targeting, like, they have a target audience, and they're trying to target that audience well. It's not like immature boy.
Well, it's like Wonder Woman 1984 is generally the tone that you would probably want a Wonder Woman movie to have.
Yeah. Which is nice. A nice change of pace. But regard, I look, I know that it's like corny and it's horrible, but I did love the grim dark tone of Justice League. Just to bring it back so we can close this out. I did love the grim dark tone of Justice League. I thought it all worked out really well. It felt like I was watching an epic showdown between these people. The runtime contributed to it. All of the pretentiousness contributed to it. It's definitely not for everyone, but for some reason, like, Zack Snyder and I were vibrating on the exact same level in the Speed Force. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, it's so much better than the theatrical cut. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's Snyder's movie. It's got all of his bad habits, but also everything that he's good at. So.
Quickly, I think we
It
mentioned
is what it is.
I think we mentioned this, but just quickly, what did you think of the color grade?
It worked really well in some places, but like I said, in others, especially on Themyscira, everything looked CGI. Like real
that's
people
right. Yeah, you
standing
did
in
say
real
that.
places looked fake because of the color grade. But other stuff looked really good. The
Batman looked good.
Batman looked. I mean, the finale looked great.
Yeah.
I think. Like, the color grade did hurt the movie in a few places. Like, I remember there's the scene where Diana tries to find Cyborg, and he's like, meet me here in some city street.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Diana drives up in a Mercedes, parks the car, gets out, and this city street looks so weird because it's almost completely devoid of color. Like, the headlights, the blue headlights on that Mercedes are supposed to be really blue, and they're almost white. And then the neon signs all look kind of faded out, and it looks strange. So yeah, there's a couple shots where it looks kind of funky because of the color grade, but it's Zack Snyder's favorite color grade, so
Yeah.
it's kind of what you expect.
Washed out, high contrast amber.
Yeah, I'm just glad we have emo sad boy Cyborg back. Like, even though I'm used to Cyborg being kind of a pretty upbeat character, for this movie, him being like, all of the cringy Frankenstein lines that he has they work really well. They work so much better than whatever Joss Whedon had him doing.
Booyah!
It's like, don't go outside, son. There's monsters out there. There's a monster in here. Like, it's like, and then Gal Gadot's like, you should help people. You have a gift. He's like, a gift? or a curse. I didn't ask to be born. No one understands me. And then he flies away listening to fucking Jimmy Eat World or whatever.
Fucking Good Charlotte's the Anthem comes on. Oh, Jesus Christ. Well, that's for the record. I like the grade because I like seeing Batfleck, so I was just happy to see him back.
Okay.
Chubby,
I was just
swollen.
gonna say one last note on
One
last note on Cyborg, who I still think is probably the biggest improvement.
Oh, by
of his
far,
character
by
from
far.
the actual cut to this, is that also his finale works better when it's like coming from emo Cyborg to where he's like, maybe I don't have to be an emo sad boy anymore.
As his dad
It's
dies.
like all that works really well, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's like his whole, like, he's already just this depressing teenager, and then his situation gets worse and worse and worse, so he becomes even more of a depressed teenager. Because like everyone he cares about just keeps dying, or like bad shit keeps happening to him. And then at the end, the mother boxes are like, oh, you know, like, come join us. You'll be happy. And then he's like, you know what? Like, actually, I'm okay. Like, I'm doing good. I have friends. And it's like, yeah, that works. It's good writing.
Yeah,
I said it. Good writing in a DC movie.
Surprisingly, Chris Terrio's script isn't a steaming pile of shit, unlike The Rise of Skywalker and Batman v Superman. So, you know, maybe it's a combination of. I doubt it's the studio notes, but it's like finally, Zack Snyder got someone with a script that it was like, you know, pretty decent. I think we should wrap it up on that note. I think depressing Cyborg finally finding happiness is a good, just like in the movie, it's a good end point here. If only we had Joe Morton to.
It's a metaphor for depressed Zack Snyder finally finding happiness.
Tragically, like, affronted Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder's been through some shit.
Yeah, he has.
He's had a rough go of it.
Yeah, he has.
So I'm glad he can have this win.
It actually makes me excited for Army of the Dead, and apparently he's shooting it himself. He's always wanted to be his own cinematographer, so. You know, we're going to get 500 times more slow motion. But still, excited. So
the entire movie will be shot at 50 frames per second, and then speed ramp down to 24.
No, the whole movie is Zack Snyder went there and he's like, yeah, I need those red cameras that shoot 60 frames a second. And they're like, oh, really? Oh, cool. So you're going to do a high frame rate movie? It's like, no.
Nope.
They watch the final release.
Sir.
It's like, well, if this were in normal 24 frames a second, if it was shot 24 and projected 24, this movie would only be, like an hour and a half. Instead, it's like 5 hours long. It's like Frodo at the end of Return of the King when he's like, Gandalf. It's like every single line is like that. It's like, we need to find. Yeah, it's. Anyway, congrats, Zack Snyder. I was utterly impressed with Justice League, and Gabe thought it was, better than it was before. I guess that's.
I'm not a Zack Snyder fan, but Zack, you done good.
He did good. I think that's a great place. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe. Also,
yes,
we're available on the internet. We have a website called underthewheels.com, which is really great, and you should totally click on every single article that's on there. And we do reviews and news and other cool shit. The podcast is available on whatever you're listening to it on right now.
I wasn't going to say anything.
However the fuck you say that. It's available on the platform that you're using right now, as well as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. With more to come. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Music by Mike.
Scene.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go wear a shirt with Hope on it and viciously beat him in.
Zack Snyder doesn't have the word total dissonance in his vocabulary. Oh, man. Oh, shit. I gotta order a Starbucks drink. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Austin.
And you've just been Under the Wheels.
Also, what is up with J.K. Simmons' like GQ hipster haircut and
Fuck, we didn't even talk about J.K. I don't know, but it was hilarious. He put on a bunch of muscle for
it's
it.
ridiculous.
He put on a ton of muscle for the
He
movie.
did?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
even notice.
Shit, like he was excited about it. He was like, "Yeah, I put on a bunch of muscle for the movie," and he's in like 3 scenes, and I was like, "Bro."
And he's in a suit in all 3 of those scenes.
I know. It's not like in Whiplash where he rips off his shirt and you see like, oh my god, J.K. Simmons is gonna kill me with his freaking biceps. It's just like, nope, he's just because everyone in a Zack Snyder movie has to be freaking gigantic and wide, unless you're a woman, in which case you have to be like, he is the ultimate comic book director. I mean, it's there you go.
Yeah, it's true.
Henry Cavill shares Justice League crushing BTS photo. As you can tell, I'm a huge Henry Cavill fan. I think he can play Superman however way they need him to, and they just keep failing him.
Yeah. Although it's the weird thing is like the Superman that he is he would be the best at is the one that that they don't want him for. Like he would be the best at like the real, like goody two shoes Superman. But for whatever reason they're like, nah, he's gotta be sinister.
Which is like, it's the weirdest thing. Like, Zack Snyder's casting is really good, and yet, like, he ends up casting him in roles that really suck. But like,
Yeah.
like Kevin Costner is a great choice to play Pa Kent, and then he's just like a mopey guy who's like, you know what, Clark, maybe you should just let the human race die. And then like, yeah, or like Amy Adams. I don't know about Amy Adams is the one questionable spot as Lois Lane, but they don't give her anything to do either except either have babies or die. But anyway.
Yeah, like Gabe is just going on forever, and I even said it's like I gotta go, guys, like 30 minutes ago.
Finished.